So in today's lesson, I'm just going to show you some quick tips and tricks for your vector portrait assignment. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm just going to pick a standard paper size. So for print, for letter, and I'll just call this vector portrait. And then I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'll find my image. And the image I found was too big for this, so that's easy enough. I can always scale it down. So I'm going to hold Shift and scale it. And then I'll zoom back in. So I'm just using Control minus and Control plus to zoom in and out. I'm going to open up my layers. So if your layers is not opened, you go to Window, Layers, and here's my layers. I'm going to lock that bottom layer because I don't want to draw on this. So you can rename it and call it whatever that original layer is. Then I'm going to go over to the side here where it's Create New Layer. And this is a little tip and trick that I like to bring up, is create that full face shape color. So then when you go into adding all the details, you make sure that there are no white holes. So I'm going to turn off the stroke, turn off the fill, so that I can just go around and make this face shape. I'm going to go above the hairline. Again, I am clicking and dragging. I'm clicking Alt to remove that last curve. Again, I'm going over the hairline because the hair will cover it. You could add the ears right now, or you could add them on a separate file. But if you add them on a separate file, make sure that you're very aware that there are no white holes in between. So I'm actually going to put it on a separate. And I always like to really zoom in to make sure that I'm getting a nice accurate line. And again, I'm just clicking and dragging. So holding the Alt on the last point should be very comfortable for you to remove that handle at this point. Finding photos of children or of really old people with wrinkles is actually a lot harder to work with. Children because they have less details, and wrinkled people because the lines are actually really hard to work with. So I always recommend trying to find a photo that isn't over washed out, that has some nice light and dark values that you can work with. So I can just zoom out and pretty much connect this at this point and here. So once I have this face shape, what I want to do is grab my color picker and I want to find a medium tone. So I'm trying to find something that here is way too washed out, here would be way too dark. So I'm just going to kind of go on his cheeks there. So if you don't like it, easy enough, you can just cross it out. Maybe you want to find more of a darker value. If you want to double click, you can actually go in here and change up the color if you wanted it more of a peachy tone. And here, let's say I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this medium face tones. And I'm going to lock that. I'm going to turn the eye off of it. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call this face highlights. And I'm now going to go in and draw all of the details that are light. So I would go in around here, around here. Now this is the tips and tricks part, is how do you want your face shapes to look? Some people really like zooming in and creating small sections at a time. Some people like zooming out to about this area. My suggestion is when you create a shape, let's say I'm going to go for around here, you always want to make sure that you are looking further away. Step back from your computer for a little bit and see if the shape makes sense to you. Okay, so for example, let's say that this is a face shape. Then I would color pick and I would have a light value tone. So if I turn on the layer below, you would see that I have a light value. Now what you'd want to do is you just keep creating all these small little shapes to create your collage. If you look at some of the examples, some of the students actually like working a lot smaller, so they don't want to have such a large detail. They will actually go in and create really, really small ones. So I'm just going to turn off the color film. And they'll go through and they'll see all these little small details, and then they would color pick. And you'd keep going and creating all these different shapes. Sometimes it actually helps if you find an image that is a lower resolution, because then you can start seeing all the pixels here, and it might be easier for you to separate it. So obviously when I'm zooming in over here, I can see that this is a darker value area, this is a lighter value area, and sometimes that helps. If you pick an image that is too washed out, it's harder to work with. Over here, when we have darkers, it's easier to see the darker values, whereas this would be one shape over here, another shape right beside it. You can choose to add the little freckle or not. Here is another shape right there. You could make this a darker tone on his nose right here, a darker value right here. So I don't have time in this video to go through and actually make all the shapes. That would be very long hours and hours of video to complete this project. So I decided just to kind of give you some little tips and tricks, and hopefully that helps. One thing also to look for when you're looking for images, teeth tend to be really hard to do. A lot of the times they look like they're cartoony too much, or they're chiclets. Also too, you never put a stroke on teeth. If you put a stroke, an edge around it, then it looks like they're evil. They have evil teeth. So if you want to work with teeth, also take in consideration that teeth have to have multi-tones. So you would see that there is a darker value on here, there is a lighter value below, there's even this little shade, this light beam through here, there's a darker value on the top. And then at the end, you have to make a designer's choice. Do these teeth match? Because maybe you want to color pick this tooth to match this tooth. You don't want them to all look different values. If you pick a dark value from here, it might look weird for the value here. So that can be a designer's choice. And ask me if you have any questions if you decide to use an image with teeth. And there you go. Good luck.